Welcome. Here we go. I'm going to get into part 9 of reading bits and pieces of this book, Adiyogi by Sadhguru. And let's get into it. I'm going to read little parts and pieces, and it's going to be fun. I'm going to comment on it. You can comment on it below if you wish. And let's get into it. So I think we left off at page 15. And I'll read the last line that I left off at. So part 8. So this is part 9, or episode 9, I guess you could say. Don't look up to anything. Don't look down on anything. I've heard Sadhguru comment on that before, and he said one of the things that creates the most karma, or tons of karma, is when you say, oh no, I don't like that. Oh, I like this. Oh no, I don't like this. Oh, I like that. Ooh, that's gross. Oh, that's amazing. It's you're putting your perception on things, and it creates karma. It's a karma creating machine, he said. Like this, don't like this. Anyway, it's very interesting. So I'll read that line again. Don't look up to anything, and don't look down on anything. It resonated deeply with me. When I first heard it, given my own long-standing mistrust of hierarchy, it still comes to my rescue time and again. The only response to mystery, I've realized, doesn't have to be suspicion or submission. Other options exist. Curiosity, a willing suspension of disbelief, receptivity that doesn't lapse into gullibility. Nice words. Inquiry that doesn't freeze into conclusion. Right. I enjoy listening, not uncritically, and I am often happy to defer to disagreement as well. I like the mix of rational and the non-rational that Sadhguru is capable of whipping up. In this account, it is true the latter predominates at times. I receive it as a fascinating tale. At other times, I question much of the time. I don't entirely understand, but I prefer not to dismiss. How are you liking it so far? Are you into it? Not just because there are more things on heaven and earth. Horatio, it's from Hamlet, and Hamlet has often come to my aid in my interactions with Sadhguru. But because there is an essential kernel of trust, that trust didn't blossom overnight. Let me rewind, and this rewinding is strictly for readers who, like me, are seekers, to grapple with the reluctant to relinquish autonomy and the fear of compromising their freedom. Interesting. Very cool. Why Sadhguru? Or sorry, why a guru? That's a good question. And there are so many answers to that question, you know? There really are so many good answers to that question. I would say, personally, for me, I mean, I can think of two main good reasons, but personally for me right now, I would say, why a guru? Because they make your they can make your spiritual progress way faster and way easier. That's the main reason. That's one. There's two more reasons. Two would be they're kind of like a middleman between you and God, or you and the ultimate, and they kind of can be like an antenna to hone in those kind of the spiritual vibes from the ultimate to them, to you. You connect through them. And being in their presence, or if you're initiated and doing mantras and such, you can feel their presence. I do with my guru. I absolutely do. After some yoga and meditation, after a regular kriya, and then chanting, with the right chanting and right specific chanting at a good time, you can absolutely feel it. It floods my body with just like blissful, feels like warm, powerful energy that's blissful. It's just like, oh, it's great, and you can feel their presence. Now, without a guru, to get that kind of energy vibe, you're gonna have to do some like meditation hacks, or you can spend 3 hours meditating there's so many different types of meditation. You could spend 3 hours meditating for 40 years, maybe, to get there. Of course, when I say the word meditation, there's so many connotations, like so many different things it could mean. That's why some people don't even like using that word, meditation. I think in yoga, there's like 10 different main versions of meditation that they each have a name. They don't use the word meditation. They just use those other 10 to specifically say what kind of meditation. You can have pranayama, which is, there's like many, many, many different types of breathing in energy, breathing in air. And so many types of meditation. I would say chanting and pranayama are two of the more powerful types. But there's so many, like just noticing your breath and concentrating on the breath. And if you can focus on the breath for long enough, that's supposed to be one of the fastest paths to enlightenment. But I find that like kind of boring. Like I need something a little more involved, like an actual pranayama, breathing technique, or a chant, or a mantra, or even just om. You're just doing om over and over. And you can, when you're doing om, certain types of oms, you can concentrate on certain chakra areas. And that can have all different amazing effects on the body and the mind and your chakra system, your energy system. Okay, so where were we? Let's get back into this book. All right, the question. Why a guru? Okay, so there's other reasons too. Another reason would be when you're around your guru, they can look into your system, into your energy, and into your mind, your past and your future, and they can be like, oh, this meditation is right for you, or this practice, or this type of food, or whatever. They look at you. A good guru will look at you and be like, oh, okay, you need this. Don't do that one. It won't do anything for you. You're not at that stage yet, or that's way behind. You're way above that stage. So that's an important area. That's an important reason for a guru too. So there's lots of reasons. All right, so where were we? We were at that question, why a guru? Why can't you learn from life? Oh, another thing too is there's guys that do hacks. I forget that one guy's name, Joe Dispenza. I personally, I think he's like a bullshit artist, basically. A lot of people can sell programs to raise the kundalini and have the kundalini break through all the knots in your system between all the chakras and ignite the chakras, and even go into the crown chakra and have like a huge experience. But without months and months of years of training, to be able to handle those energies. And without initiations, proper initiations, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you won't be able to hold on to those levels of energy if you break through. One, and two, it can make you end up in the psych ward, because it's all these traumas and all this energy, tons of energy, maybe spiritual powers coming in along with all of your traumas, smashing together all at the same time. So a lot of people end up. So I don't recommend forcing opening all your chakras up or Kundalini rise, making the Kundalini rise fast. You want to do it over at least many months or years with good teachers or good guides. So I don't recommend Joe Dispenza. I think he's a slick snake oil salesman. I know he means well. It's like, just force people in one weekend to have a full Kundalini awakening. It's like, it's just wrong on so many levels. Some people benefit from it. A lot of people do. They have a great experience, and then they go about their life after. But it's wrong on so many levels. Taking an advanced yogic principle thing that's super sacred and just selling it wholesale, instantaneous, like instant week. It's like if you could get someone to have abs in one weekend, it's probably not good for you. Like, what would it take to get someone to have abs in one weekend? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy, right? Like, you would have to work out 8 hours a day, run marathons each day. You could do it in 1 week. Run a marathon every day for 8 or 9 hours, and no food and no water. You could do it. And but you might die. It might kill you, though. It probably would kill you. So, oh yeah. So there's a few other guys. Aaron Abeck. He has like a few month program for opening up the heart chakra, and they raise the Kundalini up to that area. That, I think I want to try that one out. Actually, it's awesome. And there's many other people. Sadhguru has it's a few year program where you slowly do piece by piece by piece, and you slowly build up your energy and get initiations to be able to handle holding on to that level. Once you kind of reach those levels, you can actually hold them. It's not just a fun experience and then you go about your day and you go back to normal. No. It's like you're actually graduating up the chakras, and you can hold that vibration after, which is, awesome if you can do it. And there's yes, also another guy that I love, Dave Asprey. That guy, I love that guy. Like, I just totally, like, I don't know, something about him. Like, he's kind of weird. I think he had Asperger's when he was younger. I don't know if he still does, but he talks like a weirdo, kind of, it's Asperger's. It's like mild Asperger's, and ADHD. He also has that too, I think. Yes, well, he said in his book. But I think he's been through a lot of the same conditions that I've been through: chronic fatigue and many other ones. Obesity, which I was when I was younger, and I swear I spent like 50-60% of my energy for like 15 years of my life just trying to get in shape, battling weight gain, fat, obesity. Hello, kitty. Don't touch the mic because it'll make popping noises. Okay, so let's get back into this. My cat wants to hang out. Hi. Don't touch the mic. Okay, let's get back into this. So, I was talking about Dave Asprey. So he's written, I think, 2 books now on meditation and how to hack it. He was deep into Buddhism for a long time, I do believe. And he traveled all over India and such. But Buddhism happens to have very boring, slow meditations that don't really do anything. I find they make you healthier and happier, but so Dave Asprey, he's like, he has I think a new book coming out called 40 Years of Zen. So he's like, how do we get to these higher mind states, spiritual mental states, without 3 hours of meditation every day for 40 years, right? And he's like, so he's using technology to hack it. And of course, I think it's a long life passion of his. So he's really invested for many, many years. But anyway, I want to get into some of his stuff too, because yeah, awesome, very cool. I mean, if you can get 10 times the results, or do that, like get to amazing states without, dedicating your entire life and waiting a whole lifetime to get there. If you can do it really fast, like, why not? Why, right? Except for in the case of Joe Dispenza's type stuff, where it's clearly, he's clearly like just wrong. Like, ugh. Can you not shake the mic, Edmond? Okay. So yeah, Joe Dispenza type stuff, I think, is absolutely just almost disgusting in a way. Some people love it. Some people have thought that, great experience. They're like, amazing. But Dave Asprey type stuff, I think, a million times better. Yeah. He's like about getting into certain mental states, not about bursting the kundalini through all the knots. See, with trauma and with karma, your karma and your ego, it makes, like, it ties knots in your system between each chakra. Some are bigger and more solid knots, and they're like energy knots, kind of stopping the energy flow. They're kind of on purpose. They're there so they're like safeguards. But they're like traumas too, right? Now my cat's chewing on the plants. Emma. Anyway, you want to go through them slowly. And then there's people that dedicate their whole lives, and they become brahmacharis or monks. And they over 10, 20 years, they get rid of all those knots, every single knot. But you do it slowly and carefully, so it doesn't make you go crazy. A lot of people do go crazy temporarily if you go too fast. You can't handle that energy, Okay, back to the book. That was a lot of talking in between reading, but hey, we're here to have fun and talk, So where were we? Right, why a guru? Right. Why guru? Why can't you learn from life? A spirited young woman asked me after reading in London. It was a question after my own heart. I might have asked it at one time. Why guru? I could have replied that a guru unlocks those parts of you that are shut, sealed, forgotten, and unavailable to life. He helps open doors that you were too scared to open. That's true. I've heard of that too. As well as doors you never knew existed. And those aren't the portals customarily uncovered by psychotherapists. But I knew that the urgency of her question merited a longer, fuller answer. In the tangential way, this book might be a response to that question. Interesting. When I met Sadhguru in 2004, I knew a few things about myself. I knew that I found most of my answers in poetry and the arts. I knew I was lucky to be earning a living doing largely what I enjoyed. The boundaries between work and play were happily blurred. Life in the big city of Bombay, or Mumbai, or Bombay. So, Bombay, the British, when they enslaved India, or whatever you want to call it, they changed Mumbai's name to Bombay because they couldn't say Mumbai or whatever. But they've recently turned it back to Mumbai. It's called Mumbai again. Bombay. That city of many names, the city of many names and faces, was full, frantic, absorbing. I enjoyed its various voraciousness, its vibrancy, its unexpectedness. But there were also many things I didn't know about myself. I thought poetry would eventually fill in the blanks, but poetry was also about blanks. That's true. I hadn't quite bargained for those. It took me a long time to understand that poetry was a dark art because it was, in fact, a perforated utterance. As a child, when I turned to poetry, it was with a sense of wonder. At the giddy span and bump of language in motion, the texture of language, now whipped cream, now whipped cream, now gritty granola, suddenly deca mousseline, I don't know what that is, spelt pure sensacious delight. Okay. But then life intervened, and gradually the wonder diminished. Several friends from the cultural world seemed invested in the sameness too. We told ourselves we led the creative life. We led the creative life. And certainly our lives were less driven by life insurance, club memberships, and timeshare vacations. But as much as I needed my artistic community, I could see its unspoken anxieties, its emperor building impulses, its rituals of self-congratulation. I was part of it. At the same time, most of the happy people around me, I decided perhaps somewhat unfairly, weren't particularly worthy of emulation. They were either shrilly effervescent or plain vapid. I didn't trust either. One seemed desperate, the other devoted to a life of sheep-like docility. And then poems and gaps, those blank spaces on the page. And at one point I fell headlong into one of those craters. That's when I experienced that what absorbing verbal alchemists must also contend with, derailment. I now began to uncover vast, terrifying areas of myself that I could never hope to signpost in language. There had to be another way. My omnivorous reading of philosophy wasn't enough any longer. I was beginning to realize I couldn't live out my life in one silver sliver of my cerebral cortex. It's like staying with just a little shred of the functioning of a little part of the brain isn't cutting it anymore. Or in one cranny of my left ventricle. It was clear to me now. Emma, you're touching the mic again. My cat gets jealous when I'm doing this and he wants attention, which makes sense. I totally lost my reading spot. Omnivorous cerebral cortex. It was clear to me now that I needed a way that wasn't a piecemeal engagement with mind or heart, but one that percolated into all of me. Percolated? Yeah. If I wanted to lead a less divided life, I had to start by accepting that I was lost. That's true. I think when people do accept the fact that they need a guru, it's kind of like they're like, okay, I tried a million freaking things and I've gotten kind of nowhere. Sometimes, like, if you do progress by yourself spiritually, you can, and I did when I was younger, but you got to dedicate every second of your life to it pretty much. And still, it's like little progress. It's the big enough progress that it's amazing, but you can't hold on to it unless you keep meditating all day. It's like impossible. Yeah, I heard this one phrase, the best, the best soil for spiritual growth is soil that's built on disappointments and broken dreams or something like that, or whatever. I forget exactly how it goes. That wasn't it exactly, but yeah, and that's usually when people do be like, okay, maybe I do need a guru because they're not getting anywhere spiritually with spiritual progress, or they're not happy in life. They have tons of progress in every area, but not really spiritually, and they're not really satisfied, and they're not really happy, even though they may have everything in that our modern day life has to offer, like career, money, family, whatever. But if it's not really satisfying, that's when people might be time to get a guru, right? Oh, there's another angle too, but I won't go into that now. And so I turned seeker. Conscious seeker, that is. I could deceive myself that I was learning from life, but most of the time I was trying not to make the same mistakes, and the rest of the time I was making them. Yeah, I could tell myself I was being edgy or original when I was actually reenacting age-old patterns of self-preservation. Yeah, even just being stuck in karmic cycles. It's like the trauma and the karma passed down through your family line and through your genes, both, and then through your own patterns and cycles from your past history, your past lifetimes. It's really like you are programmed. Pretty much everything you do is programmed, and you're just cycles and cycles and cycles and cycles. Basically, you think you have free will, but you absolutely 100% do not. The free will that people do have is like 1%. If we're talking about all the karmic cycles, traumas and karmas passed down through your genetics, your current family, how you were raised, and then your own past karmas. These patterns, they absolutely rule your system. That's why people like say some certain people reject their parents point of view on life, and they're like, I'm not going to be anything like you guys. And then later on, they end up being exactly like them anyway, even though they tried as hard as they could to like just not be like them. They might be a different flavor, but basically the same, exactly the same in the end. Like, wait a second, I'm becoming more and more. It's not that they're becoming; it's that they're set in those cycles. You can't. It's like the subconscious. Part of the subconscious is actually the body, right? All your cells have memory. And when you're a kid, you download everything from 6 months before you're born to the age of like 7 or something. You download every single emotion, every single mannerism, everything in like 8K, 4K, 8K. You download it all, and then that's kind of your operating system. Like and that's just one part of it. There's all your genetics that go back for several, probably a couple hundred years. That's deeply ingrained. So however your ancestors lived, you're going to live that way. Whatever they worked on, shortcomings and successes, you'll have very similar. Very, very similar ones. It's ingrained in you. So one thing that's interesting, I forget what it's called, but there's several different ones in real yoga, not necessarily Western yoga, but like original yoga set around India, areas of India. A lot of it's about how do you separate from the ancestral karma and trauma and patterns and your parents and all that. How do you strike out on your own, like for real? So you're not absolutely controlled by these patterns. And they have systems for that in yoga. Whole huge systems. And it's not like they're doing it to be like, I don't want to be like that. And it's not that at all. It's that they want to have free will and develop spiritually. They do it in a very respectful way to their elders and to the family, you know. Where was I? And so I turned seeker, conscious seeker, that is. I could deceive myself that I was learning from life, but most of the time I was trying not to make the same mistakes, and the rest of the time I was making them. I couldn't tell myself I could tell myself I was being edgy and original when I was actually reenacting old patterns of self-preservation. So that there he's going. He's like, he was saying what I was saying, or similar to what I was saying there. I now found myself drawn to those who asked questions. Oh, very good. Who seemed to have confronted the terrors of life and advocated of conferred meaning. They questioned the same things that the rest of us did, but seemed insane enough to stake their lives on a question mark. Ooh. These crazy insurgents were the mystics of the world. Oh, yeah. And all of them seemed to be dead, like maybe in the past. The great mystics, the great yogis, enrolling for, hello kitty, for meditation and self-help programs didn't boost my morale. If anything, it left me feeling a bit ridiculous. Yeah. For sure. Here I was succumbing to what I'd always abhorred, asking self-styled professionals for answers. Let's see how many pages left of this chapter, or I think it's like a beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. self-styled professionals for answers. After priding myself on being the independent upstart, the unlicensed seeker, and to be asking questions about the meaning of life well into my 30s, it was mortifying. But the questions gnawed, and they eventually ate a big hole into my life. So when I walked into a public talk by a person called Satguru at the South Mumbai Auditorium in 2004, I'd already journeyed from being a determined amateur to somewhat battered one, not ready to dissolve into a puddle of self something, abnegation, perhaps, but certainly willing to be surprised. On meeting Sakuru, he struck me as the first person I knew who combined intelligence with palpable joy. Yes. And for all this knowledge of the self, he hadn't lost any of his capacity for wonder. That helps to banish the intermittent doubts I had along the way about his avowed state of self-realization. Above all, this joy wasn't annoying, monarchomatic. He was capable of mystical insight and robust common sense. Usually you don't get both of those. Hardcore mystics and common sense usually are like separate things. Why? I don't know. They go partially crazy. I don't know. He could be he could be wise and childlike, quiet and exuberant, profound and playful, meditative and impassioned. And I realized that none of these states were mutually exclusive. His knowledge of the inner life seemed inexhaustible, but his appetite for knowledge seemed limitless too. He was the only enlightened person I knew, and yet he didn't act like he had arrived. He seemed to know about the nuts and bolts of the inner world, and yet he wasn't jaded. It was evident in the curiosity and aliveness he brought to every moment in his life. He seemed to be a proof that innocence and experience could go together. Or, that makes sense. Or to use another metaphor, that nirvana and samsara. Nirvana and samsara. Or the Garden of Eden and the fall of the and the fallen world. Were more fundamentally connected than I had imagined. It wasn't that he was perfect. That would have been dull. He seemed, and this is the only word I could think of at the time, whole. Ooh. Yeah, I like that. That's good. I realized that I didn't have to agree. I didn't have to agree with him all the time on matters unrelated to the spiritual. We have had our disagreements, often heated, and those haven't abated. It struck me that he wasn't looking for groupies. He wasn't looking for acolytes. In fact, he didn't seem to be looking, as far as I could see, for anything at all. His level of ease and his own skin intrigued me. Ease in his own skin. comfortable in your own body. Perhaps he was exactly what he was said to be, a free being. Absolutely. Totally is. Life around him always being somewhat confusing. Rough and tumble is how he once described himself as a guru, but it can also be a life of accelerated self-discovery. It's a bit like being in a car where he's at the wheel, abandon and control, reckless and accuracy, exhilaration and exactitude. As a hair-raising driver of cars and navigator of destinies, Sadhguru seems to embody all of those contradictions in one crazy mix. His advent in my life was cyclonic? Cyclonic? In a poem I wrote at the time, I said it was like opening my coffee percolator, only to coffee machine, only to find my roof flying off. I don't know. As I emerged from the fear and exhilaration of that collapse, the winds blowing more gustily around me, I realized I could no longer live a life conveniently fragmented into daytime poet and stupendous seeker. Surreptitious. However we say that word. Seeker. If I wanted to begin a journey towards wholeness myself, I had to accept my uncertainty, my rooflessness. I don't know if that's a word. Rooflessness? But it's a good one. It could be a word. I could no longer live in worlds that seemed either barrenly secular or hermetically sacred. I needed betweenness, bridges, dual citizenship as what was suddenly a necessity. Disruptive and often unnerving, but most reflective of what I now was. The past 12 years with Sadhguru have been about realizing that there are other ways of knowing than recourse to a book or a cerebral introspection. Being around a mystic has been about glimpsing deeper sources of nourishment, subtler methods of self-understanding, of journeying towards authenticity, to throw away the spiritual because of my mistrust of phony petty. I realized was to throw away the baby with the bathwater. So if you're enjoying this, like and subscribe. I think I'm supposed to say like and subscribe at the beginning. That's what people are doing these days, right? Because most people only watch the first 2 or 3 minutes of any video. It's like 99% of people or something. I don't know. So you got to say it in those first 2 or 3 minutes. So we got 3 pages left. Let's do a little bit more. Someone once informed me that I wasn't skeptical enough in my approach to Sadhguru. That's what anyone says when you're like, oh, I think I have a guru. And people are like, whoa, wait a second. That's crazy. It gave me pause. Paradoxically, I mean, I think if you're on the spiritual path and you don't have a guru, that's kind of crazy. But also too, like if you're too invested in one group, I think that's also crazy. Like have a guru, but don't be so invested in one group that you don't do basic logical things, kind of, you know. I was raised in a religious cult and a Christian organization, and yeah, there's definitely an enormous amount of negative outcome from being raised in any cult. I think any cult will have negative outcomes in many areas. I would get into it, but not for now. Any religious cult, I mean, because it could be like a workout cult or something, you know, a culture. Where was I? It gave me pause. Paradoxically, I suspect I am probably seen by some devotees as far from model disciple, a little too angular, a little too irreverent. I've always thought I was quick to disagree, to argue, to cross-question even when I know that Sadhguru's deepest answers are invariably non-verbal. Yeah. I remember him saying one time, Sadhguru, that he's like, when I started doing yoga programs, they'd be like, what do we do in the program? He's like, doesn't matter what you do, just come and hang out with me. And they're like, okay, but are we learning a certain type of meditation or yoga or like how to eat or something? And he's like, no, you just, like, literally, if I said absolutely nothing and you just sat within 20 feet of me, you would learn the same amount than if I was talking or not talking. But he's like, it confuses people because they're all up in their head. So he's like, I had to say something because they're just confused. They're like, why am I here? What's happening? But literally his energy is just seeping into them and slowly like bringing them to life, you know, and that's like the thing, you know. And when he gives like an initiation, a yogic initiation, he's just giving them an energy key or a type of energy to unlock their energies, you know. And it doesn't take words, you know. So let's wrap it up there. I think this has been a nice long one, and yeah, like and subscribe if you're into this at all. And this is episode 9, I do believe. So look forward to episode 10 coming down the episode of 10 of this book, reading and commenting on it. And you guys, please put your comments. You put your comments in below if you have questions or your life experiences, you know, that have to do with this content. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye for now. Cheers.